Hi everyone. This session is titled g0v.py, governance.txt. My name is Chihhao Yu, and I'm from Taiwan. I'm a g0v contributor. First of all, this slide is publicly available on the internet, so if you go to the URL here, you can just see the slides for yourself. This slide is also open sourced. It's released under a CC license. Here are a list of contributors. And before we begin, there's a warning that says personal perspectives do not represent g0v as a whole. I'll explain more later, but because g0v is a community, not an organization, so everyone stands for themselves. Everyone speaks for themselves. Let me introduce a little bit about g0v, which is the name of our community. g0v is spelled G0V. The name came from the word government, G-O-V, but replaced the O with a 0, meaning either start over, start from 0, or digitization of government. This is a Taiwanese movement started from 2012, and it has been very active until now, actually. The g0v community has a manifesto, and it describes what it is in the document. So I will try to adapt from the g0v manifesto and summarize it for you and tell you what g0v is in my own perspective. So g0v is a polycentric community in Taiwan that uses open source technology and open collaboration to better governments and society. Every slide would have sources that links to the sources, the references that's used in the slide. So here you can see a Mandarin version of the manifesto and also an English version of the manifesto linked in the slides. So what this means is g0v is a community that has a lot of centers. These centers include projects or task forces. And each of these centers, these projects, these task forces would decide what they want to do for themselves. And each one of these centers would collaborate together. And g0v's main methods are using open source technology and open collaboration. And the goal is to better governments and society. So today, since it's PyCon Korea, the organizers have asked me to introduce some examples, g0v projects that use Python in the past and in present. So as the title of this session suggests, I'd like to introduce to you some g0v projects that used Python. So after a little digging, actually, Python was there from the very beginning of the g0v community. So I would like to introduce to you a group of projects that falls under 4 categories: open government, open data, education, and media literacy. And of course, there are many, many more projects in the g0v community. But today, because of time, there's only so much we can discuss. The first one is actually the first project of the g0v community, which is TW Budget, which stands for Taiwanese government budget. It is one of the first project that produced by g0v, which is how we call ourselves as g0v contributors. It is a project that visualizes Taiwan's central government budget. And since this is a web version of the presentation, I can just go to the web page and show you live how this project will work. As you see, this is a interactive visualization of our central government's budget. If you click, you can actually know more detail of each of these budget items corresponding to some government agencies, big or small. And because of humor, which is a very important component of the g0v community, this website also converts every item of the budget into cups of bubble tea or slices of chicken to sort of represent how big the budget item is. The second project that I'd like to talk to you about is Voter Guide. Voter's Guide is a voter's guide, which is it lists information of candidates for Taiwan's both local and national elections. The Voter's Guide is a very old project in g0v community. It started in 2014, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. It has undergone several iterations, and this is the 2020 version. If you can see, this is a link to all the legislative candidates here, grouped by cities or counties here in Taipei. You see all the candidates that was participating in the election, and if you click into them, you see some of their information, including which of the legislations they've supported, including how much Facebook ads they have put out on Facebook. And then we have projects for open data. The first one, this one is also very old. It's ER dashboard. ER stands for emergency rooms. This is a dashboard of all the emergency rooms in Taiwan, showing how many patients are in each of these rooms and how many beds are available, for example. This project Rentia is a newer project in the g0v community. It is about rental housing info in Taiwan. And all of these project uses Python in various ways, including front end, back end, but most of them use Python for data processing. This one is pronounced Moedict. This is a dictionary, an open source dictionary that is also a very old project in the g0v community. And this is a combination of a lot of different government and academic sources to combine into one open source dictionary online for people to use. And if you see here, this is the Moedict website. This is a term that says the best or the brightest. And then this is the Mandarin version of the phrase. And these are the Taiwanese version, the English version, even French and German. Because this is open source, it also allows people to collectively correct it if there's any mistake. Another project is Aidaigi, which in Taiwanese means love Taiwanese, and Taiwanese is our local language here, quite different from Mandarin, which is sort of a standardized language. This is a website for you to learn different pronunciations of Taiwanese terms. You can actually listen to the pronunciation on the website. It also has interesting features like how to pronounce your name or how to pronounce Pokemon monsters. And that was educational projects. And the final category I want to talk about is media literacy project. This one is called NewsDiff. As the name suggests, this project record or archives news articles, but also detects changes over time. This is the website of the project. You see, each item is a news article, and the system automatically detects the first instance of the article when it's published, but also subsequent changes in the article, both in the title or in the content. So it's very useful if you want to do further analysis on news coverages here in Taiwan. Another project I want to talk to you about is Cofacts. Cofacts is a crowdsourced fact-checking platform. and a line bot. What it means is that it's a line bot, as in people can send suspicious information to Kovacs database. It's a crowdsourced fact-checking platform, as in people can collectively come together and fact-check those messages together and publish the results into Kovacs database so that the original user who submitted the message will receive them. This is Kovacs website, and you can see how it works. You forward suspicious information to the line bot. And then if the database contains it, you will receive fact-checking results. If the database doesn't have it, then you could also join the fact-checking efforts. Another project is Zero Archive. This is very new in the g0v community. This is an effort to archive not only just the news websites, but all kinds of different information here in Taiwan, including some of the more suspicious ones like content farms, but also Taiwan's local web forums like PTT or Dcard. These media literacy projects all have open data, which means it's very useful to researchers and academics who want to do this kind of research. So there are a lot of projects in g0v community. And why are there so many projects? A big component of the g0v project, the g0v community is food. g0v community hosts hackathons every now and then, and every hackathon would have a lot of pizza, a lot of fried chicken, a lot of drinks, and also desserts. And sometimes these foods are themed to make it more interesting. So these events and this food is a very important component that supports the entire community and what you might call infrastructure of the community. And we just saw many projects in g0v community that's using Python to do all sorts of things like open data, like media literacy. But you can also use Python to build up infrastructure of a community. So I'd like to talk to you about this. Two major functions of infrastructure in a community. One is to connect, and the other one is to discover. Because g0v community is such a polycentric or decentralized or distributed community, there's a lot of different things in different places that you might not know about as a g0v contributor or as an outsider who wants to know more about g0v. So important features of infrastructure is to connect a lot of different projects and different people, maybe into one place, maybe into a GitHub repo. So you can see a list of all kinds of things that happens in g0v community. Another important function of the infrastructure is to discover, is for you to discover things that you're interested in the community, despite its decentralized nature. So for example, you can use Python, and people have used, g0v contributors have used Python to, for example, collect information on GitHub repos or GitHub issues. But people have also used Python to build a search interface for all kinds of things g0v related. This is the search interface on g0v's official website. If you search, for example, COVID, you will see a lot of different things. This page is full of chat log, and there's more chat log, and there's more chat log. So this is an example of using Python to build up infrastructure for the community. So I think infrastructure for g0v is also infrastructure for polycentrism, which is infrastructure to support this kind of distributed community. There are a lot of times when people ask, why is g0v decentralized, or why is g0v polycentric? It's a very important question and very interesting one. Everyone has their own opinion and everyone has their own perspective when answering this question. What I think is, why is Gov0 polycentric is because democracy is also polycentric. In a democracy like a South Korea or Taiwan, there are a lot of different kinds of people, and people have all kinds of different opinions, and people form different groups, different organizations, different networks, and every different networks or different groups does different things. And because we have basic freedoms, civic liberties, we're doing what we want to do, and we have the freedom to associate, we have the freedom to assemble, and we have the freedom of speech. And these kind of these values are the values that Gov0 community supports. So what I think is Gov0 could be seen as a mini version or a shadow version of the larger democracy or society that we live in today. And Gov0 is also a very good place to discuss or even experiment different kinds of democratic methods. So a community like Gov0 is very decentralized or polycentric, which also means that it needs policies and mechanisms to protect or to support its polycentrism. I think a community like Gov0 needs policies and mechanisms to maintain its polycentric nature, to prevent abuse, to express its many selves, meaning everyone is Gov0 contributor, and everyone sort of reflects different characteristic of the community. The community also needs policies and mechanisms to grow and to evolve into whatever the contributor wants it to go. So these kind of policies and mechanisms could also be seen as a part of infrastructure. And although it's not Python, it's not written in Python, it's still kind of a code. Maybe it's policies, general concepts. Also, maybe it's just very concrete rules that defines how things are done and what other things are not allowed. This is why the second part of the title of this session is governance.txt. Although governance is not actual runnable code, the computer might not know it. People certainly know how to read and how to set up and how to challenge these kind of code. So I'd like to talk to you about these kind of code as a second part of this session. Like the part before, I've also identified some different categories when it comes to governance, different projects. Some of these projects here in Gov0 community is related to policy. Some of it is actually establishing mechanisms for how things work and what kind of things are not allowed. The other kind of project is to create maps, which means since Gov0 is such a big and diverse community, we need maps to navigate. We need maps to understand sort of the whole picture, or as close to the whole picture as we could possibly be. And the final category is 0RG. This is a play on the organization, but it's not a top-down or a hierarchical organization as we usually are familiar. This is organization that has Gov0's characteristics, but also doing concrete actions to sort of implement the policies and mechanisms and try to evolve and make them better as well. From the very beginning of the community, you see a lot of shared documents that talk about these things. Here are 3 examples of early Gov0 documents that talk about governance in a very philosophical, but also sometimes very concrete ways. There are 3 topics: citizenship, media policy, and foreign policy. If you look at foreign policy, it almost feels like Gov0 is a kind of government, which actually was part of the idea when Gov0 community was first started, is to create some kind of shadow government in order to supervise the government and to better the government, to show a different working kind of prototype, to show that we can govern ourselves differently and more efficiently and more inclusively. The first document that we have is regarding citizenship. It talks about how to talk about yourself as a Gov0. In Mandarin, there's different kinds of terms to describe yourself as someone who is connected or who is participating or who is contributing to the community. And here is the actual document that talks about this. It actually just lists out different kinds of way to identify yourself as someone who's connected or who acknowledges the community. This first one is contributor. The second one is participants. And then different kinds of way to talk about yourself. And it also lists out the pros and cons of different ways to identify yourself. For example, if you say that you're a member of the Gov0 community, the pros are it's easily understandable for other people, and it creates less confusion for other people. But the cons are because Gov0 is a polycentric community that has very vague borders. The term member just suggests that some people are inside, some people are outside, but it's actually more complicated than that. The second document is media policy. Media policy talks about how Gov0ers go on the media and talk about Gov0. Here is the content of the document, and it has many suggestions on what to do and what not to do. This is the document for foreign policy. It actually just expands media policy and talks about how Gov0ers engage with sort of the world. Things are not communal. Other hierarchical organizations or other people that has not heard of Gov0, and how do we engage with them? It lists out different ways of engaging with the world. This one is a panel discussion, maybe a press conference. What is the best way to sort of navigate those situations? And here is when you are the point of contact. How do you do that? This is when you're invited to give a talk. How do you do that? And yeah, it's very interesting to read these early documents to look at how early on Gov0 contributors think about these issues. And these issues also persists in the community. People still think about them, and all kinds of different mechanisms are still being evolved or being changed as we speak. There's two examples here I'd like to provide that actually set up concrete mechanisms for governance. The first one is the amendments, or how to amend the Gov0 the Gov0 manifesto. Remember one of the first slides we talk about Gov0 manifesto is how Gov0 describes itself. So what happens if Gov0 evolves and the description when it was founded no longer fits the current situation? It's sort of like, how do we amend our constitution when things have changed, when time have passed, when situation is very different from before? So in October 20th, 2019, some Gov0ers actually came up with a procedure of how to amend our manifesto. the central idea is that anyone could propose an amendment to the manifesto. And there are also some conditions regarding how do you propose an amendment. It has to be proposed in the big hackathons that g0v community hosts every 2 months. And it has to have a host of this proposal, meaning that one person has to be the point of contact of this proposal. And it has to have open documents that anyone can read about the proposal and how it's being discussed in the hackathon and also in follow-up meetings. And once the proposal is finalized, it has to have a public review period of 2 weeks. The link of the proposal has to be posted in g0v Slack for as many people to see as possible. And if there's no opposing opinions in 2 weeks, then the proposal is adopted and it becomes sort of the new manifesto. And if there are opposing ideas or opinions, then we would resolve to a general discussion in the general channel of g0v Slack. So this kind of procedure is very important because it lists out exact steps of the governance. It's not vague ideas or vague abstract concept. It's actually something that you can follow and go through. And this is a checklist, so it's very easy to see where each of these proposals is in terms of their progress. So this is actually the final version that has been proposed on October 20th, and it was passed 2 weeks later in November 4th. It amends the original manifesto into its current form. So this document also provides some history of the original manifesto and the changes underneath this, and a log of all kinds of discussions that happened during the hackathon and also during follow-up meetings. One of the interesting points that happened during this discussion is the phrase liquid democracy. When g0v was first founded, the idea of liquid democracy actually excites a lot of people, and it was put inside the original manifesto. But over time, we realized the difficulties of the liquid democracy, and in the current form of the manifesto, this term no longer exists. The other interesting part is about freedom of speech or freedom of expression. And there are talks about if freedom of expression is actually the best way or the best phrase to describe what we support fundamentally. But then the term actually, well, after a period of discussion, the term actually, people have decided that this term actually is still the best way to describe what we think here. So it was kept unchanged. So this is a very good example for me to see, while g0v has fundamental ideas as foundations or infrastructure as the community, it's also very adaptable and it's also very open, transparent. When people propose change, open discussions are facilitated, and different ideas are considered. This sort of, for me, in a way, manifests how g0v manifests g0v's own beliefs in itself, which is very interesting and very good to me, I think. The second example is how the g0v community governs its social media platforms. As you might know, g0v has an official Facebook account, Facebook page, actually. So the question, the concrete question is, who gets to post what on g0v's Facebook page? So this has been very vague for sometimes, and sometime last year, some Gov0s, including myself, decided to come together and discuss if we can set up a concrete checklist style mechanism for us to for all Gov0 contributors to follow, and while not make Gov0 Facebook page the tool for minority of the Gov0 contributor, but actually anyone can propose a post to be posted. So this is the final mechanism that was discussed and decided. And we have decided that there will be a group of reviewers that reviews every post that's been proposed to be posted. And fundamentally, what's important is that all the proposals and all the discussions has to take place in public spaces, in public channels on Slack, or in public shared documents like Google Doc or HackMD, so that it remains transparency. We have also decided the governance mechanism or model of the reviewer group. Who gets to be a reviewer? Anyone can say that he or she or they want to be a reviewer, and if two people agrees, and they can join the reviewer group and become a reviewer. And we have also discussed the review period, meaning how long does a group does a post have to be reviewed before it's posted. So this is a very concrete and and something that could be practiced in reality. And this mechanism has actually been heavily enforced during the past couple of months, because right now the Gov0 community is preparing for its summit at the end of this year. And because of the promotional needs of the summit, there were a lot of posts being proposed to the reviewers to be posted. And the workload spiked and produced a lot of workload for the reviewers. And that was a challenge for this mechanism. And perhaps there will be a discussion of how to make it more efficient in the future. But the important thing is all these discussions are transparent and open for anyone to see and participate, so that it doesn't become closed off and abused by some people rather the other. So let's go back to the slides. The other type of project is map. This is a very difficult kind of project to do because Gov0 is so diverse and so decentralized. No one actually knows how big it is. For example, we know that on Gov0 Slack, there are more or less 8,000 accounts, but we never know the exact number of people who would identify as Gov0, for example. And we have never known the exact numbers of projects that's in the Gov0 community. That's why people have done things like aggregating repo info or aggregating issue info. People have done multiple project hubs to try to aggregate all the projects of the Gov0 community, but it was a very difficult project to do. And so is the map. This is something I attempted less than 2 years ago in 2018. I was trying to think of different projects that I know in the Gov0 community and try to create a map of how they overlap. And this map was created. It was very chaotic. It's quite difficult to read. So this is a very early draft of what a map could look like. And because Gov0 is decentralized, everyone could create their own maps. And maybe there is a way to collectivize these results and create a more inclusive map from different perspectives. And the final example that I want to share with you is organizations or groups or task forces, as we call them, that practice these governance models or mechanisms. There are more than one of these groups, but the one I have been participating is called g0v International. This is a fairly new task force that was established in the end of 2018. Sorry, in the end of 2019. What we were concerning was the governance of g0v's international affairs. Since g0v was founded in 2012, because there were a lot of projects and a lot of contributors of the g0v movement, people from outside Taiwan started to notice the community and started to reach out and trying to establish different kinds of relationships. g0vers was invited to give talks. g0vers were invited to collaborate with outside organizations outside Taiwan. Some other chances are people want to fund certain g0v projects. These all kinds of international exchanges or affairs really touches the center of what we've just talked about, governance of a community. At its core, I think, is the question who gets to represent the community when reaching out to the international community. So g0v International is a new task force that's established to think about this problem, because there are a lot of different problems that we think of every day, but if there's no people inside the project to think of it constantly, there will not be progress. So because I think about governance a lot, so I participated in this task force to think about this problem together with other g0v. And one thing that we feel strongly is that rather than doing international exchanges through conferences, by giving talks, giving keynote addresses, what we think might be a better way to do these exchanges is to host hackathons, international hackathons, so that it's not so much as one g0v on the stage representing the entire community, but it's more about inviting more than many g0v contributors to come to the event, and also inviting a lot more different members or contributors of different communities from the world, to come together in a hackathon and actually talk about projects and actually work together on projects. So this is one thing that the g0v International Task Force think would more or less alleviate or lessen the impact of one person representing the community, because there are times when this is necessary, when talking to groups or organizations that doesn't necessarily know what a polycentric community is. So what the g0v International has done in the past 2 years is host such events. The g0v International Task Force hosted 2 hackathons along with our partners or our friends in Japan, in South Korea, and in Hong Kong. The first event was hosted in Okinawa, actually. We were joking that Okinawa is sort of the midway between all these places that we are collaborating. It's actually not, but everyone gets to fly somewhere else, which is really interesting and attractive to a lot of us. We are calling these hackathons Facing the Ocean, Meet and Hacks. Facing the Ocean is something that we've talked about and discussed together between contributors in Taiwan, in Japan, in South Korea, and Hong Kong, and thinking about facing the ocean, finding different opportunities to network together. And the first one, as I just said, was hosted in Okinawa in June 2019. And the second one was hosted in Tainan, here in Taiwan, southern city of Taiwan, in December 2019. And we were scheduling the third one to be hosted in Jeju Island, South Korea, this summer. But because of COVID-19, we're not able to do that. So instead, we've been hosting online sessions, small or big, trying to keep this network alive and exchanges our experiences in all kinds of things, including how to fight this pandemic together. So, in close, I'd like to share this thought with you is although there are a lot of different projects in g0v, I think my favorite g0v project is g0v itself. It's being to see all its diversity, all its differences, but also trying to find commonalities between different projects, different people. And thinking about governance might be really dull for some people, but not to me. I think about these rules, these mechanisms a lot, and these I think really is important to a community that wants to keep its polycentric nature and wants to keep it open, wants to keep things transparent. So that's why I decided to accept the invitation of the organizing team and come to you and share not only the history, some projects of the g0v community, but also governance and how g0vers are handling this very different and complex issue together. So there is a very common saying in the g0v community, which is "you are nobody." This comes from a wordplay in the Mandarin language, is that when we often complain, why is nobody doing this? But one belief that's very central to the community is that you are that nobody. If you see something that's not nobody's doing, maybe you're the one who's supposed to do that. So in close, I'd like to share this saying with you that all of you are nobody, which means that if you see something that you want in the world, you are the one to make it happen and exist in the world. Not only just using technology, not only creating open data, but other things as well. People often ask, if I don't know how to code, can I participate? Can I join the community? And people always say yes. You don't need to know coding. You don't need to be an engineer to contribute to a g0v community or any other kinds of community that's using technology and collaboration to better government and society. In g0v, there are a lot of people who are designers, who are writers, who are lawyers, who just doesn't know how to code, doesn't know how to write computer program. But everyone knows. But the important thing is keep the spirit of open source in your heart and collaborate in an open manner. And that way, the community will thrive and grow with you. So here are 3 links if you're interested to follow. One is including these slides. A lot of these, most of g0v's shared documents live in this web service called HackMD. This is a link for you to check out all the different kinds of documents that's being composed by g0vers. The second link is for you to join g0v Slack. If you're interested, come into our chat room and talk to us. And the third link is actually, if you're even more interested, you are very welcome to join us at the end of this year, in December the 3rd through December the 6th, the g0v Summit 2020, which is g0v community's biannual gathering. this year, because of COVID-19, foreigners might not be able to attend physically here in Taiwan, but we are working very hard to design mechanisms for people to participate remotely, including our speakers and regular participants, attendees. And this year's g0v Summit, the temporary or the the working theme is locality and connectivity, which means that there are a lot of communities here in Taiwan, not just g0v, and there are a lot of different communities in our region, in Taiwan, in Japan, in South Korea, in Hong Kong, and other places here in Asia, and also across the world. So we want to explore what more can we do when we're connected? What more can we do when these networks are built, are maintained, and are nurtured? So as one of the co-chair of this year's g0v Summit, I very sincerely invite and welcome you to come in December to join us in g0v Summit 2020. So that's my session. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, come to g0v Slack and I'll be there. And as will be many more g0v contributors to answer your questions, to introduce you to different projects, and yeah, just to talk. Thank you very much.